Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to this, another John Campea Show companion video. I am your host, not John Campea, but Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. And of course, we're still answering questions from our epic 5-hour plus spoiler review of Avengers Endgame, a movie that I don't think any of us can get enough of. But here we go, without further ado, the third video I have done answering your Super Chat questions. One day, I hope to get through them all. I don't know if today's that day, but it could be. One never knows. We're going to start with, as I get this all right up here, with Film Boss. Film Boss says, Thor can absorb the energy from a star, yet a few barrels of Earth ale can get him drunk and fat. His powers and strength are always iffy in each film. Well, you know, it is hooch from Earth. You never know how the metabolism of an alien, much less a god, an Asgardian like Thor, is going to handle the beer. It wasn't light beer either. It was like foreign beer. It was probably a microbrew. You just never know. But I believe it. Neutron stars, nothing. They burn that fat away. But the brewskis? Mazone says, would have loved to see Cap get the Soul Stone and confront Red Skull one last time. Could be. It would have been interesting. But you know what? According to the Ancient One, the stones just have to be returned to their reality. They can't be removed entirely from their reality. So who's to say you have to return the Soul Stone to Vormir anyway? Maybe you can just get it anywhere in the universe. Who knows? Let's see. John DeBenedict is here. I do hope some of the lingering plot holes are resolved in some of the future films or Disney Plus shows. Otherwise, they didn't bother me much in this. Well, I think you're going to see that happen. You just never know. Where's Loki? In our reality, he's dead. But in one of those realities, he escapes. So I think we're going to see, well, we call them plot holes. Somebody's going to deal with them at some point. Akushu Davala says, hey, John, I love the movie and had some great moments, but I still feel like Infinity War was the better movie and was more balanced and complete. I'll grant you that. I think it was a different kind of a movie. I think it was much more of a superhero film, whereas Endgame really dealt with a lot of human emotion, and they spent a lot of time dealing with the post-decimation, what would the world be like. Different films, but I think, look, as we've said so many times on these chats, I think they work really well together as two sides of a story. Ross Pitt, Shark Hunter, says, I drank at least half my very large drink in the first hour of the film, and I didn't need to pee once, not even until I got home. Speaking of, I might need to see a doctor about a urinary problem. Well, Ross Pitt, I hope that's not true. Rock Lobster 9 says, I've seen it 4 times now, and I think Culk could have made Cap young again. I know why he didn't, though, so Cap could get his send-off. Yeah, plus, he wouldn't have really made Steve Rogers younger. I mean, Steve Rogers lived that life. He might have looked younger, but inside, I don't know how forcing time through someone as opposed to having someone move through time would affect them. It couldn't have been good, I don't think. A fan of Peanuts says, John and Robert, how the hell did Captain America return the Soul Stone without sacrificing a life? Can you explain this better? Well, I don't think he would have to sacrifice a life to return it, but as I said, we don't even know if he had to return it to Vormir. He just had to get it to that reality. That the Ancient One said the Soul Stone, the Time Stone just had to come back. She didn't say it had to come back to the same place, just to that reality. Alex Arrow says, Nat should have had a funeral scene too. I agree, perhaps she did, but it was just off screen. Daniel Latrill says, hi, John and Rob. My first super chat. Endgame gets a 9 out of 10. First of all, thanks for supporting the show, and I agree with you. What a movie. I loved it. Rodney Jackson says, the Far From Home trailer implies Parker and Fury never met, but they were both at Tony's funeral. Mistake or trailer trickery? Who's to say that's really Nick Fury? I'm betting the Chameleon, but we'll see. We'll soon know. Tinosvaldo Mendoza. What a cool name. Tinosvaldo Mendoza. That sounds like a drug lord in a Miami Vice episode. I love it. Guess we know how Loki gets Disney Plus show. Failed Space Stone heist. Laugh out loud. I agree. I can't wait for it. Third Man number 3 says, thought the VFX in the final battle was bad. You did? I liked it. I mean, it looked like, after a building like that gets destroyed, there's so much particulate matter in the air. I really enjoyed the end battle sequence, but I understand. Vikram says, minor nitpick, but why didn't Doctor Strange create one of those portals and then have someone throw the gauntlet through it to get away from Thanos? I don't know. Heat of battle? John Martin sent us a super chat. Paul McElliott says, could all the talk of a Black Widow movie have been another misdirect? I don't think so. Don't think it was a misdirect. JC iPhone says, Steve didn't land back on the pad. Did he stay in the current time? So that means he let Hydra grow under Peggy and Bucky torture for 70 years? Well, maybe he couldn't interfere with the timeline. Time travel is always tricky. You never know. Sam Demers says, oh my god, Endgame had the best hour in any comic book movie. You were right. It was everything you wanted to see and more. Standout moment was Cap with Mjolnir. I loved it. Certainly something I've wanted to see since, of course, we had it teased in Avengers Age of Ultron. Marcos44 says, hey, John and Rob, Cap couldn't pick up the hammer in Ultron because he was keeping a big secret from Tony. Also, Cap bringing back the stones means a reunion with Red Skull in Vormir, right? Well, theoretically, but again, I don't know if the Soul Stone actually has to be returned to Vormir. Maybe that can't happen. It just needs to be in that reality, in that universe. Maybe he took it back to the Collector. Third Man 3 says, I hated Fat Thor. I get it. I guess he is basically like I get he's basically like a cheat code and can't be full powered for the whole movie, but the joke just never ended. You'd hope he gets his strength back for the final fight. Well, I think he did. I think really it's all about character. It's all about who Thor was as a man. And while he physically wasn't the golden Adonis we expect him to be, he still found his inner Asgardian, his inner thunder god, and was able to triumph, which I think is important. I think that's the message of Fat Thor in the movie. Ross Pitt Snake Hunter says, is it just me or is Clint's nose very boopable? Do you want to boop Clint's nose? I never thought of it that way, but now you make me want to go watch all of Jeremy Renner's movies and decide whether or not his nose is boopable. I'm going to look out for that. I'll get back to you. Gavin Denard says, I want to hear Rob's opinion on Thor. Personally, didn't like it. He's my favorite, but oh well, it was funny. How'd you feel? Well, again, I mean, we saw Thor at his full power, his full self in the beginning of the film. And when he meets Captain Marvel and says, I like this one. But remember, even after killing Thanos, they failed to save half the creatures in the universe. And he blamed himself. He lost Asgard. He lost his father. He lost his crazy sister. He lost his brother. He lost half the beings in the universe. And he let himself go for 5 years. I actually really liked that. I liked seeing that even a thunder god can be humanized in that way. And it meant a lot more when he was able to come back at the end when our core team, when Iron Man, Cap, and Thor took on Thanos themselves. He was able to muster the strength and come back after we saw him. And, confronting his mom was one of the great scenes in Endgame for me. I thought it was terrific. So I liked it. But I understand why people don't. John D. Benedict says, I thought the way Thanos accepted his defeat at the end was a perfect mirror to the last show of Infinity War sitting on his porch. Great send-off for him. John, couldn't agree more. I think you're absolutely right. Ardent Defender says, hey, John, watching you since the show, was in the closet at AMC and loved the show, saw Endgame 4 times and cried every time, ordered pizza for the show panel on me. You know what, Ardent Defender? I am going to hold John to that. I think we all now have to get a pizza pie, and he's got to pay for it, and we'll eat it on camera. We always get We always get pizza from BJ's, which is down the street from his house, and I like it. I like their meat lovers pizza, so I'm going to make John do that. Take him up on that. Take you up on that. Jermaine Sneed says, I wonder how the Captain America Red Skull convo went when Captain America returns the Soul Stone. Well, if he had to go back to Vormir and he had to return the Soul Stone there and give it back to Red Skull, who we don't even know if Red Skull can put it back, but I'm sure it was an interesting conversation. I wonder if Cap would have shared the list of pop culture references he had to experience with Red Skull. That would have been kind of funny. Saeed Mirza says, John sucks at predicting. Wish Schnepp was here. Hey, what's up? You got me? I miss Schnepp too. You know, his birthday would have been, his 52nd birthday would have been on Thursday. So drink up to John Schnepp. His birthday would have been on May 16th. But I'm here. I'm somewhere between John Schnepp and John Campea, I'd like to think. Tilsvaldo Mendoza again says, we know, of course, I'm in charge, right? Pause. Of course. Of course. Of course. I love that so much. It was the final Thor, of course, to Star-Lord that put me over the top. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Patricia GM says, I left the theater with a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know how they ended Cap's storyline and who he handled the shield to. Let's see, Patricia, do you ask more questions? I don't see. I don't know where your second question went, so I've got to go back. Well, when I find it, Patricia, I'll answer that. I really enjoyed who they gave the shield to. It's not unprecedented in the comics, so I thought it was good. We'll see where it goes. Robert Perez says, John, people are talking spoilers in the chat room. There's only so much you can do. Lizzie J says, with Loki stealing the cube, will we see his adventure in the Disney Plus series? Could be. I think we're going to see it. We're pretty sure going to see it. I can honestly say, I think it's about 100% now. John Martin says, John saw the movie dead tired and it rejuvenated me. It was so good. How did you like that very last sound of Tony making the original suit? You know, that's what you're speaking about is what happens at the very end of the credits. I thought it was a nice fitting kind of bookend to the whole Infinity Saga. Really liked it. Geo says, hated body fat Thor, but loved themes of fat Thor. Well, I agree. I mean, look, here's the thing. People change and people fall out of shape, even a Thunder God. And I think the way they utilized it was ultimately pretty great. Pretty great. Kind of loved it. Julie said, can you believe that Feige built this franchise in a cave with a box of scraps? Great callback to Iron Man 1 at the end of the credits with metallic sound. Julie, couldn't agree more. Very astute observation. Really love that. Mason H says, when Thanos started overpowering Cap, I was like, no, me too. But you know what? Fanos, man, he can deliver a beating. There's nothing better than watching a great superhero beating in my mind. Luke Blackwell says, Cap was really an old man at the end of Endgame, but can't they just make him younger without sending him through the time machine? Kind of like what they did with Ant-Man when he stayed still but changed ages. Yes, but what was happening to Ant-Man was a mistake. That probably wasn't good for anyone. So who knows what that would have done to a human being. So I'd like to think that no, that would have been a good thing, Luke. Andrew Jones says, Karen Gillan from Doctor Who was amazing in Endgame. She, of course, played Nebula. You know what? I thought Karen was an MVP in the movie. I really love what they did to Nebula, and she played two different versions of Nebula. I thought it was great. She's a great character, and she's a great actress, too. And I love the design of that character, and thank God they're finally making a Nebula Hot Toys this year. Well, it's not going to come out till 2020, but still we're going to get one. John Henderson says, on your left. Didn't you love that? I love that. I love when he said on your left and then everybody shows up because you're all like, oh, we didn't know what that meant yet. Boy, it's going to go down in history. Robert Perez says, just kidding. Love the movie. Well, thank you, Robert. Nikki Andrews says, didn't see Thick Thor as a gag, but a great look at what depression and despair can look like. Couldn't agree more. But it did provide some great comedic relief. Amazing how comedy can be used to explore many things. You know, people say that comedy is tragedy plus time. I tend to agree with that. And I really did like what they did with Thor in the movie. Josh Tull says, I love you 3000 made me ugly cry. Is there a pretty cry? It made me cry too, Josh. And I think I love you 3000 is at least going to be another catchphrase for, I don't know, 6 months. Carter says, it seemed Bruce and Hulk were battling towards some kind of dual existence in Thor 3 in Infinity War, but Bruce completely won out here, killing Hulk's consciousness and taking his body. It's just 100% Bruce. I don't know. I think it's an amalgamation of the two. As Bruce said in the film, that he used to look at he used to look at Hulk as a disease to be cured when he realized it was to be accepted and embraced. And I think that's what they did. And it's not unprecedented in the comic. Patricia comes back. She says, I also hated what they I also hated that they destroyed Hulk, and Thor was okay, but not for the whole movie. I also felt the movie was unnecessarily long. The fight was epic. Well, Patricia, those are all very good criticisms. I really enjoyed the whole thing. It all worked for me, especially how the first 2 acts really set up the despair and what was at stake, and then the time travel, the time heist, as Ant-Man said. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed everything about this movie, for the most part. I've seen it 3 times. Derek Woodron says, weird that Thor, Iron Man, and Cap couldn't take Thanos with Stormbreaker and Mjolnir. Then Thanos calls his army after taking a beating. Love the film, though. Yeah, but you know what? I think like somebody with adrenaline, Thanos, he steps up to the plate. He's a bad hombre, that guy. I mean, you never know what kind of power is surging through his body. Jamal Gaskin says, Cap's combos with the shield and hammer versus Thanos, so good. I especially love when he used the hammer to slam the shield into Thanos. Come on, talk about fan service. That got my blood pumping, let me tell you. Kristen Larison says, on your left. Yes, sir, Tristan, on your left, indeed. Jim Jambaroo says, where was Thunderbolt Ross? Saw his name in the credits, but not in the film. He was at Tony Stark's funeral. He was there. Gabe A says, you can go now. He needed to hear that from Pepper. So poignant, Gabe. I really love that. I really loved when she said that to him. You can rest now. So good. And a callback to earlier in the film. Sherry Amiris says, I grew up with Iron Man, so seeing him die really marked the end of my childhood. I cried like a baby. We'll miss you, legend. Love you 3000. It's true. But isn't it kind of neat that you now have some piece of media that you can always look at for the rest of your life that signifies the end of one portion of your life and the beginning of another? Isn't that what movies are so great for? For me, that movie was Star Trek the Motion Picture, if anyone was asking. I could explain that later, but it was. Scuba Steve said, Thor was funny until the 3rd act. Thor deserves more than just being a joke like Drax. I wish after his mom told him to eat salads, she changed him from the god of keggers back to the god of thunder. Yeah, but you know what? You can't change your life so quickly. And that was part of the lesson of the film. If Fat Thor could have just become young, svelte, beautiful, ripped Thor, it sort of would have diminished the whole idea about what he was going through in the film. Devin Crumb 23 says, how did Nebula bring Thanos' whole army through the time machine? Did she have extra Pym particles? Also, I thought you had to have one of those wrist time things and a special quantum realm suit. Well, here's how I looked at it. Of course, Ebony Maw and Thanos' team, which are very, very far advanced from us, found these Pym particles and duplicated them. And they had as many as they wanted, and they used it to shrink Thanos' ship and Thanos' forces. And it's really interesting, though. You make a good point. But remember, she did have that GPS system. She stole it and replaced it. And that's how she was able to get back, because she took it from our Nebula. Thomas Mises says, Tony and Natasha's death feel to me like a real person died in the real world. Is that weird? And everyone for years speculating Cap was going to die. You know, there's friends in my life I haven't known for a decade. And I think even if whether they're fictional characters or not, there's still people that live in our minds. And fictional characters, mentally for us, can sometimes feel just as real people. Because when you're alone and you're thinking of somebody that you're not with who's real, or you're thinking about a fictional character that resonates with you, they both occupy the same place in your mind's eye. So I understand that. I think that's good. Dylan Knight says, how does Thanos get to quantum-sized time travel? Again, they probably made their own Pym particles because they're so advanced. They just analyzed what the Pym particles were and duplicated them. At least that's how I saw it in the movie. Andrew Jones says, I was very emotional at Tony's death. I will miss the character. I will too. I think we all will. But you know what? Tony Stark had an 11-year run, and if you think about it, that's more than 10% of a century. That's a long time. How many pop culture icons live that long? Peter Rufus says, mathletes all snapped or some stayed back 5 years. Well, could be. I mean, if you think about it, think about the fact that it was half the population of the planet Earth. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's half the people everywhere. Some places you're going to lose everybody. Other places you're going to lose half the people, a quarter of the people. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that everybody at Peters High School, virtually all, what if everybody in his entire state were part of the people that got snapped. I'm sure that the decimation wasn't exactly mathematically spread out across every population center. So I have no problem believing that the mathletes or even his entire class was gone. Rogue says, Karen had said that Nebula has a new best friend. But who? Rocket, War Machine, Tony, her sister? I feel like she's a very big part of the heart of this movie, and she was wearing Ravager colors. Yeah, I mean, maybe there was only Ravager colors on the ship. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But I think it's great. I think Nebula, part of the whole arcs, especially through Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and now into Endgame, is that Nebula has people that she belongs with for the first time in her life, now that her father's gone. I think it's a great message to these films, among the many messages that were contained in these films. Vikram is back. He says this film reminds you of the little moments we wish we had with people that are no longer here. Tony with his dad, Thor with his mom, Cap with Peggy. They all got to have those final moments they never had originally. I agree with you, Vikram, absolutely. And I think it makes all of us, all viewers of the movie, we think about our own loved ones that are no longer here. And I think that's, again, the strength of this as a comic book film. It's amazing how much this film resonates with people and what it means to people. It's a special movie, especially for being a comic book movie. G7 says, so is there a second timeline that was created in which Thanos and his army stopped existing after 2014? Looks that way to me. I don't know what that would mean to that timeline, but absolutely. JC iPhone says, the bit of Ant-Man aging and de-aging was funny, but also set up for Cap to come back if the cinematic CE Marvel wanted to. Also surprised he only talked to Bucky for 30 seconds. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't fit everything in there, but I don't think that pumping time through a person to de-age them is actually good for them. It was shown as something to be avoided in the movie, so I don't think it's necessarily good. But I guess you could if you wanted to. The Wonder One says, love Cap versus Cap. I can do this all day. Yeah, laugh out loud. Again, I thought it was great. The movie had so many callbacks to the rest of the MCU, which is what made it so much fun to watch. Andrew Jones is here. He said, I was glad Captain Marvel was only in the movie for 15 minutes. Well, I'm a big fan of Captain Marvel, and I'm a fan of Brie Larson. I would have liked to have seen her more, but I thought they used her very, very well. It was great that they focused on the original core Avengers team. They deserved it. Patricia GM says, at the end, because of how they ended the OG Avengers, I'm not looking forward to what Phase 4 will bring. I'm only interested in Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, but Patricia, who knows? Maybe you're going to see something with the Eternals that you've never seen before. I'm really excited to see Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. I think that's going to be very exciting. Josh99 says, I am Iron Man. Moment of the movie for me. So good, right, Josh? Loved it too. And by the way, that wasn't even in the film originally. That was something that Jeffrey Ford, the editor, suggested. So go editors. We are filmmakers as much as anyone else. Brandon Wettenstein says, went on Friday to watch it for the second time, but Cinemark had a power outage right when I walked in, so they had to close for the day. For some of the power went right out after Tony snapped. R.I.P. workers. That's funny. Alkai404 says, hi, first time super chat. Love what you and RMB do. Well, thank you very much for that, Alkai404. If you say Alkai404, does that mean you're at Alkai Beach in Seattle, Washington, one of my favorite places in the world? I love to go to Spud Fish and Chips there. If you've never been, if you live at Alkai, I know you have. But I'd like to go. Now you've made me hungry. Daryl Gann says, Robert, Best Buy has Endgame all ready to buy. Ordered it on 4K. Long live physical media. Daryl, you're a good man. I'm right there with you. Vikram says, what do you think the interaction between Cap and Red Skull was like when he returned the Soul Stone? Again, probably not good, or maybe they just had reminiscence about old times, but you never know. You just never know. The World of Bibby says, hey guys, love the show and keep up the fantastic work. Seen Endgame 3 times and love it more and more and more each time. Gutted to see Tony and Natasha go. Also, brilliant film score from Alan Silvestri. Well, The World of Bob Bibby, I can't agree with you more. Everything you just said was absolutely true. I love Silvestri's score. Just loved it. Do It for Cash says, loved the score in the Benatar before Thanos beheading. Me too. I thought it was great. Really love that song. Amartya Acharya. Amartya Acharya. I love that name if I can't pronounce it, but it's a great name. Too many plot holes stop me from connecting to this movie more emotionally than I did in Infinity War. Am I just being too jaded? No. If that's how it worked for you, that's how it worked for you. You know, your opinion matters, and only you can have it, which is great. Jer Maninen, Jer Maninen. These names, man. Sometimes I feel like I really am illiterate. Another cool name, though, Jer. Tony's scene with his father was great, and Jarvis, so good. It was so good that they brought back Jarvis. I love that. Again, the level of detail that went into this movie, really, really fantastic. John Morgan says, found the movie very disappointing and underwhelming after Infinity War. Hated how they handled Thor and Hulk. Felt almost no emotion at any moment. 6 out of 10. Well, John, I can't agree with you there. The movie really worked for me, but I understand if it didn't work for you. Richard Padilla says, hey, John, been a fan ever since your Interstellar review for AMC. Curious on your thoughts as to how the Black Widow film will play out. Prequel? I think it's a prequel. I really do. I think it kind of has to be. I want to see it. I want to see her traveling the world, make it like a Bond movie. That would excite me. Frank Gilbert says, under 10% that the old man Cap is the big cameo now that Stan Lee has passed away. Ooh, that's a really good idea, Frank. I don't know, but I love that idea. I think under, but I do love it. I'd do that. Echo Base Network says, Echo Base Network giveaway. Check us out, John. Seen the movie twice. 1.2 billion so far opening weekend is nuts. Now it's up to 2.4 and rising. Did you ever think we would see a movie do this? None of us did, and it's incredible where it's going. It is closing in on Avatar. Eddie Barber says, is it me or did Okoye tease Prince Namor during the earthquake conversation she had with Black Widow? Well, you know, Eddie, I thought about that. I think you might be right. Maybe not tease him, but it was definitely a pointed reference to an earthquake under the water. That's the first thing I thought. I'm like, Namor? Could be right. Andrew Rice says, Endgame Oscar possibilities. Possibly Robert Downey Jr. for Best Actor. Could very well be. Who's to say? Ross Pitt Shark Hunter says, someone I know joked about Ant-Man dying. However, in the context I came into the conversation he was having, I thought he was telling the truth. So the scene when the Avengers base blew up, I was scared nearly half to death. Well, what a friend you have in him. Dooley says, I feel like I can win an Oscar because all I need to sell a crying scene is think about Cap throwing the hammer and calling it back. I know, right? Crazy. Mike Stevenson says, hey, John, how do you think Cap got the Soul Stone back to Vormir? What could have been the cost, and why take it back at all rather than hide it? I don't know. Again, they never said anywhere that you actually had to take the stones back to where you took them from, just that they had to get back to that reality at the same time. So you could literally have taken the Soul Stone anywhere. You didn't have to take it to Vormir. Rob Palacio says, John, insta-kill, but it wasn't as grand as I wanted. It was pretty fun, though. I liked insta-kill. Tom Bateman says, Black Widow, just a prequel? Huge letdown, if so. Well, Tom, I don't think so. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I think they're going to give us insight into the MCU. I, for one, definitely looking forward to it. Brzezinski says, the MCU began and ended for me with I Am Iron Man. Absolutely. But you know what? They're going to make more great movies, and who knows what we're going to get in the future. I can't wait. Guardians 3, Doctor Strange 2, Black Widow, The Eternals, Master of Kung Fu, Shang-Chi. I can't wait. David Crabtree says, surprised that Clint still had the same cell phone in service and the same number after being off the grid for 5 years during his murder spree. Thought he would have let his cell phone bill payments lapse. Well, maybe he needed them. Maybe he kept the cell phone payments up. He liked the phone because it reminded him of his wife. That's all he had left of her. But yeah, it could have been weird, but I could see that. I mean, 5 years go by in a flash. Plus, he was a government agent. Maybe he had a government-issued iPhone. So it just kept working. Edward Ide says, last name rhymes with Hyde. I said it right, Edward Ide. Subpar CGI and Hulk, Banner, and Thor have been out of character for a couple of movies now. Last third of the film made up for it. Did Cap keep Mjolnir when he went back to the 40s and growled? No, he took it with him and took it back to Asgard, as we saw. But yeah, I loved it. I thought the CG on the Hulk was amazing. The face, it looked like Ruffalo. I mean, it was the stubble. Oh, I thought that was some incredible stuff. Nikki Andrews says Hulk had a harder time because he was trying to bring back Nat. It's true, he did. That's part of it. I think you might be right. We'll be okay. You can rest now, says Charlie 15 ounces. Felt like symbolism for Robert Downey Jr. leaving the MCU. He's done so much for the franchise. He has. And you know, after 10 years, Some people just want to move on. You have as much money as you'll ever need, and he'll make a lot more from that movie. Ben Jesusa says, Thor, good job for finally going for the head. Indeed, I really like that. Gary Allegra just sent a super chat. Thanks for supporting the channel, Gary. Really appreciate it. Dark Studio said, my 9-year-old brother with bad ADHD sat there completely silent for 2 hours, then lost his mind. Well, I hope he found it. I hope your brother's okay. But yeah, I don't see how you can not focus on it if you're into the MCU. It was pretty great. Anthony Cullen says, if they want to bring Cap back down the road, they can de-age him with the quantum realm like they do with Ant-Man. Again, I think maybe, but I don't think that's good for you. Maybe it's an alternative, but I don't think it's good for you. Call me crazy. Anthony Cullen says, oh, I already said that. Media Fanatic says, personal theory, I think the snap rendered Tony brain dead. I don't think he recognized Peter or Rhodey. He only recognized Pepper. No, I think he did. I think he was just kind of out of it. Caleb Kaiser says, I'll give you as many cheeseburgers as you want. I know, so good. Favreau was great. Loved it. Shadow13 sends a super chat. Thank you, Shadow13. Hector Jeter says, when all the female heroes got together at the end, it reminded me of the For Frodo scene, and it felt like they were saying for Natasha. Loved it. I totally agree with you. I love that moment. I love the A-Force moment. I thought it was great. Just another great moment and a bunch of great moments. Chancey Hendricks says, Cap must have known since Age of Ultron he could call Mjolnir. I don't think he did. I think it was something that might have occurred to him during the battle. That's part of what was going on. I really think that. I really do believe that, he didn't know if it would work. He wasn't sure. I think it was something he came up with spur of the moment, and he tried it, and it worked. Mike Stevenson says, hey, John, my daughter Harriet wants your thoughts on where a potential Thor 4 could go. Will he lose weight? Love interest with Valkyrie Sif back? I think he'll absolutely lose weight. I think just his body will burn it up. Because he's a god. Once he starts moving around and not drinking beer, I think he'll get back to his normal self in no time. Especially, we'll probably see him in Guardians working out with Star-Lord, which would be kind of funny. Will Feige ever explain just how none of the original Avengers got dusted? Maybe there was some hidden entity that protected them so they can revert to the snap. That would be cool to deepen the lore. Maybe it was subliminal. Maybe Thanos did that on purpose. Maybe he left them so they could witness what he'd done. Maybe he willed it to happen. I don't know. A fan of Peanuts says, yes or no, could Captain America have always been able to wield Mew Mew? If so, was he actually able to lift it but chose not to in Age of Ultron? Part 1 of 2. I don't necessarily think so. I don't think he knew. My Thoughts Review says, did you spot Howard the Duck with the Good Army? I did. Kind of back in there, but yes, I've now seen frame grabs of it, and it's cool that he was there. Gary Allegra says, when Tony struggled with the gauntlet less than Hulk, it makes sense because the Hawk said he trained as hard as possible to try and get Natasha back. I agree. I think that's probably what happened. Let's see. Eric Becker says, guys, thanks for putting this together, but what about that Cap speech preparing to go into the quantum realm in conjunction with the score? So good. And I think everybody felt like Scott Lang felt like he's really good at that. Even Rocket had to grudgingly say, yes, he is. Samuel Chavocha, that's a tough one. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate the support on the channel. Eric G says, I loved every scene with Rocket, especially when he pets Scott and asks him if he wants to go into space. I did too. I think Rocket is the unsung MVP of both Infinity War and Endgame. Loved him. I loved him 3000. Water Ninja Frog says, not having Natasha in that woman core team wide shot broke me down to the core. I know, man. Losing Natasha was rough, but she would have been right in there. I'm upset. Sucks John's Hulk cameo wasn't the final battle. Yeah, and you can believe they would cut John Campea out of Endgame? Imagine that. ASMR Junkie says, I'm finding that the plot holes that people are mentioning aren't really plot holes. Time travel in the MCU follows the multiverse timeline theory. Well, ASMR Junkie, my voice is a little scratchy. I don't know how I did for you, but I agree. I think that there aren't plot holes. I think that it's all plausible. Plot holes are things that just don't make sense, and I think that everything in Endgame can be explained with a little bit of cogent, rational thought. A fan of Peanut says, oh, here's part 2 of 2. If he chose not to wield Mew Mew in Age of Ultron, then is that saying that by Endgame, because Thor was shrinking in worthlessness, it found Cap in the void? No, I think that Cap, after everything that he's been through, and especially after what he's been doing trying to keep the Earth together after losing half the population, it's turned him into a man who's more than worthy. And Mjolnir recognized that. I thought that was really poignant. I really enjoyed that a lot. The Wonder One says, plot holes, schlot holes. Old man Cap is hot. I think he's hot too. Come on, we're all going to be old one day. Some people like myself are already old now. So he gives us thought. He gives us thoughts. He gives us hope. If you can be an old man and be hot, that's awesome. I'd like to think so. My Thoughts review says, seeing the Asgardian army made me happy. Knowing the few manpower they have still show up to help in the end battle. I liked it too. I thought it was great seeing all the Sorcerer Supremes and the remaining Asgardians and everybody from Wakanda. It was just a great moment. Elwood 5791 says, Cap annoyed with himself. I could do this all day. That's so good though. Luis Blanco says, good thing they all dusted with their clothes. Otherwise that would have been a very R-rated third act. Bring on the filthy. Yeah, it's pretty funny. They did get dusted with their clothes, but that was how reality disassembled itself, I guess. Josh99 says, love Hulk in this, but I wish he would have gotten a true Rampage moment. Was waiting for that in the final battle, to be honest. Love the movie. Yeah, but you know what? It was Hulk who brought everybody in the universe back. What's more heroic than that? It's just people are heroic in different ways. I really liked how that came home that way. Patrick Conway says, if you look, Peter and Ned were way shorter than everyone at school. I see it as everyone who grew up in the 5 years that passed. Yeah, but the people who were at the school in the 5 years that passed, they were there after the decimation, and everybody who came back were snapped. So 5 years went by in a blink for them. They think it's still last week. They're going to come to grips with 5 years. I'm sure in Spider-Man Far From Home, part of the movie is dealing with the fact that they've come back. The Recovery 716 says, loved the movie a lot, but I'm a little disappointed that there was no Hulk-Thanos rematch. Also, how did the Avengers get the Mind Stone? I forgot. Seeing it again tonight for the second time. You know what? I'm not right now. I'm drawing a blank on how the Avengers got the Mind Stone. I forget. But, yeah, I can understand. A lot of people are disappointed that Hulk didn't get to battle Thanos, but Hulk undid Thanos' dream, which I think was even better. Digital JP says, do you think the stone displacement will cause enough disruption? Do you think the stone displacement will cause enough disruption to bring in the X-Men in 4 years and a different Black Widow? I don't know. I don't think we're going to get a new Black Widow. Remember, even though they were called miracles, we already have Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. They are mutants. They just haven't been called that in the MCU, so I'm sure there's more of them. We just don't know about them yet. My Thoughts review says, the actor that plays Jarvis is the same actor that plays Jarvis in the Agent Carter show. Yes, he was. And how cool is that? Media Fanatic says, guess the final battle was in the trailer. Laugh out loud. It certainly was. Rusky 9110 says, scenes that should be in the movie. Cap meeting Red Skull when he brings the stone back. Well, maybe, but again, did he go back to Vormir? I don't know. Did he have to? I guess he did. He was told to go there, but I don't know. Illy Chen says, if Sony doesn't renew their deal with Marvel and Miles Morales wasn't dusted, he could take over as Spider-Man in the MCU. Where was Catherine Langford? Well, as we know, Catherine Langford was supposed to be in a dream sequence where she plays the grown-up Tony Stark's daughter. And right before he died, he was going to have a vision of her. And then I don't know if they shot it and it'll be a deleted scene, or if it's going to be on the Blu-ray, or they didn't shoot it at all. Rodney Jackson says, Feige knew long ago narratively Tony had to sell Avengers Tower because of that final battle. If that happened in NYC, it would have been devastating. Absolutely. I agree. Oh no, Chaos versus the World sent a super chat in. Thank you, Chaos, for your generous contribution to the channel. Talia Boston says, hey guys, I love the tension and build-up of the first act. The humor and drama really worked for me. The ending to me wasn't quite as good. I really like the ending, but I can understand you feel that way. I really enjoy the first half of the movie. The BBC Radio's Mark Kermode did like the first two acts quite a bit as well. Mazone says, do you think that Cap went to the 70s and told Howard Stark that the Doctor was actually his son? Just thought about this, and Howard didn't seem worried about him taking the Tesseract. I don't think so. I don't think you would have said that. Nimrod JD says, if the snap brought people back to where they last were, what happens to people if buildings were rebuilt since they died? Insta-death? Good question. I don't know. I think people would be shunted aside. I think that they wouldn't necessarily show up in exactly the same place. Troika S says, 1 in 14,605,000 chance for a rat to save us all. Probably better. You know what? I bet there's less odds depending on where they were at. You know, in that storage facility, there was probably lots of rats, so it was inevitable that one day the rat crawled across that control panel for the quantum realm, you know, and yeah, give it up for that rat. That's chaos theory for you. A fan of Peanut says, John and Robert, why didn't they let Hulk and Thanos go at it one last time? Why? Because Hulk snapped to use the gauntlet and snapped Thanos' plan out of existence, which I thought was really, really cool. Okoye and Black Widow mentioned an underwater earthquake on the African plain. Could this be a setup for Black Panther 2 and the introduction of Namor? Could be. That would be pretty cool. Someone else said that earlier. I think it's a great idea. Would love to see that happen. Eric Becker says, what's your thoughts on Thaddeus Ross' Sokovia Accords after the events of Endgame, seeing as how he attended Tony's funeral? Will their stance change? Well, I think the entire world has changed. I don't even know if the Sokovia Accords are still in effect after the 5 years into the snap. I mean, maybe not, because who knows? But maybe with what Clint was doing, it might be not so good. Just never know. Barnyard Gaytan says, do you think Marvel can fill the Iron Man void and Cap void? Yeah, I think they can. And that's going to be interesting to see it going forward. I mean, how is that void filled? It'll be interesting to see how Sam takes the mantle up, if he will, or maybe he remains Falcon and keeps just the shield. Who knows? It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, change is always good. ASJ82 says, love Time Heist. It was like Legends of Tomorrow. I agree. It was fun. Goofy fun. Loved it. Robert Johnson says, can Peter buy a beer based on his date of birth? You know what? Good question. He probably could now. Those 5 years, he'll use them to his advantage because his driver's license, I would think so. I mean, if he's 18, he'd be 22. I would totally use that. That's actually very funny. I hope they address that in Far From Home. Anthony Trujillo says, Trujillo? How is it that Stark Gauntlet snapped twice? Well, you know, they didn't need as much power because it wasn't universal. It was only what was going on the battlefield, I guess. But remember, the Gauntlet was destroyed, but Thanos had to use it again to destroy the Infinity Stones, so there's precedent that they were still around. The Infinity Stones could be used again because Thanos used the Infinity Stones to actually destroy the Infinity Stones, so... Big Bub says, so are the Return to Homecoming kids now adults that can drink? You guys are all thinking along the same lines. I love it. And do other adult things, wink, wink, or will they still be legally pre-snap age? Well, no, I don't. If 5 years went by, it's just a question of legitimately 5 years have taken place. They missed those 5 years, kind of like that show I hate watch, Manifest. But yeah, I would imagine that indeed they have to. They're adults. They could probably, and that should be a funny thing to deal with, and I'm sure they will in Far From Home. Farayapan90 says, couldn't the Avengers just hop back to any moment in time, grab Natasha or Tony, and bring them to the main timeline? Gamora was able to hop into the future. Why not them? Time travel. I don't know. We might find out. But maybe at the time they couldn't. And remember, that wasn't their priority either. But maybe it will be in the future. So does Agent 13 still exist or not? I like the movie, but feel like they botched time travel. Look, it was just different. It was not time travel the way we know it in movies like Back to the Future. They were going through the quantum realm, which is a whole different thing. Senor Eric says, just finished seeing Endgame for a third time. My friend and I picked this movie apart, laugh out loud. So many plot holes. Well, Senor Eric, I don't think there's that many, to be honest. There's just things that you have to think a little harder to get past, but I think it's all pretty much there. Benjamin Schenkel says, there are no plot holes if you consider that each time they went back in time, a new reality was created. They explained in the movie that changing the past does not affect the future, i.e. baby Thanos. I know, because you can't affect the past. It's already happened. Jermaine Walker said, I really enjoyed the scene when Captain Marvel had the gauntlet and the women came together and said, she has help. I love that too. I thought it was great. Robert Johnson says, was Peter's whole school dusted to all be in part 2? I don't think all of them were, but they could be. Because remember, half the planet, I mean, half the beings, you never know. It doesn't necessarily have to be half of everybody in every single place. I mean, it could have been everybody from his school, and then the next town over, it was nobody. Who knows? Beefy Seahorse says, I got spoiled that Tony dies via a YouTube video title, but I didn't know how. But I think knowing made me appreciate his actions during the movie even more. I agree. I think that's probably true. I like that idea. Philip Vaughn says, no funeral for Black Widow, most ignored Avenger. I think she had a funeral. It was just elsewhere. And by the way, maybe it was for the both of them. Who knows? Ben Jesusa says, Cap with Stormbreaker, Thor with Mjolnir. Wait, give me that one. You can have the small one. I love that. I thought it was great. Alan Gonzalez said, my son predicted Mjolnir. You have a smart son, and probably because he has a great father. Magic K says, Bruce and Tony just didn't care about Vision in 5 years. Well, probably not. There was probably more to deal with. Vision, they expected. Vision was dead. There was nothing they could do. Eric G says, Thanos chopping up Cap's shield looked like when Luke is hacking away at Vader and Jedi. I thought it was so cool. I really did. I thought it was great. Captain Marvelous says, there was no funeral for Quicksilver or Vision either. It's true. It's absolutely true. C. Rapier Copeland says, love the Mad Titan dynamic, came through with 2014 Thanos. Do you think Iron Man and Steve Rogers are really done in the MCU? I think they probably are. I mean, they can always be brought back, but I do think they're gone. I think they're going to concentrate on new characters now. Senor Eric says, though I will say when I watched the first time, it was the greatest movie experience. It was the greatest movie-going experience I ever had. I left the theater more than satisfied. It was, me too, man. It was pretty great. I can't complain. Mike Stevenson says, some things concern me with time travel. Dark World branch, Thor no longer has Mjolnir. Peggy, original kids no longer exist. Also R&B, Hulk holding up mountains. Secret Wars, my favorite comic. I love that cover. That's the cover on Secret Wars. I love that. Ross Pitch Shark Hunter says, what do you think the memes are going to be? Oh, man, Ross, there's so many memes now. I can't even begin to start telling you what they are. There's a lot. Alki 404 is back. Love the Thor Frigga scenes. Rene Russo, gorgeous. I love that too. I thought that was part of one of the real hearts of the film. It was really excellent stuff. I'm glad they went there. Smoking Gun says, if they killed a younger Thanos, Infinity War never happened. It's true. But remember, you can't change your past from your reality. Rodrigo Trinidad says, the Rohirrim charge in Lord of the Rings and the Avengers Assemble charge are the only 2 times I've cried from pure joy. Love this film. Can confirm Ravagers and Howard the Duck are in the film. Yes, I agree with you, man. Sheer joy. Yes, the charge, it was so good. I love the Lord of the Rings movies. Dallas Clark says, when you hear Spider-Man say, activate instant kill mode, I screamed. I know, it was so good. They knew what they were doing. Dashawn Dennis Watkins says, Cap couldn't use Hammer because he lied to Tony. Maybe. That could be. Bats 220 says, saw a theory that basically Cap opened up a different timeline by staying in the past and made everything just a little different, which we would find out later maybe. What do you guys think? I think, Bats, that's exactly what happened. I really do think that's what happened. And so, yeah, I think we're going to find out. And there's going to be repercussions of this that will, I think, resonate in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for years to come. We'll find out more and more. And those new TV shows. Robert Johnson said, over or under 20% Galactus is the next looming threat to the MCU. I hope so. Man, I love me some Galactus. I would love to see that happen. Philip Vaughn says, disappointed with Larson's Captain Marvel. Very stoic. Yeah, but, I mean, remember, she was also dealing in the movie with the post-snap in the universe. So that couldn't have been easy. David Crabtree says, Nat wasn't sacrificed the way Gamora was. Clint tried preventing Nat from sacrificing herself. I interpreted it as to get the Soul Stone, you need to kill or toss the one you love most over the cliff. It's true, and they both went over, so. Thoughts about Captain Marvel's post-credits scene. I enjoyed it. I thought that was fine. It was the way it worked in. I mean, the timeline that I think was set up, that she comes looking for Fury, and then she stays and she finds out what happens, and then she says that they know about going to Titan because she probably knew, or Rocket knew, or somebody knew, and That's why she went after the post-credits scene in Captain Marvel to then find Tony Stark. That's how come she was able to do so. Richard Anderson says, when Stark's daughter says she wants a burger, it nearly broke me. Nod to Tony's press conference after the cave. Absolutely. I thought it was just fantastic. A fan of Peanut says, when Captain Marvel was fighting Thanos of the Gauntlet, that moment when Thanos tries to headbutt her and nothing nudged her, terror on his face. Love that. Even Thanos is not beyond being surprised by an opponent's strength. I thought that was a great, great moment. C. Rapier Copeland says, curious if time travel and the multiverse becomes a large part of the MCU. Does Cap stay back to create alternate universes? Loki stealing the Tesseract? It might be. I think it'll be a little bit of one, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal going forward. My dog Gilbert is barking. I apologize for that. Ben Wilson says, would have liked to have had a conversation between Hulk and General Ross. I couldn't help but think about John Schnepp during the Avengers Assemble scene. I know, right? Me too. I agree, Ben. I was thinking about Schnepp as well. Well, listen, everyone. That brings, I've got, I think, one more after this. One more group of questions to answer after this one. I want to thank you for listening. I really enjoy actually doing these companion videos for John and to answer your questions. It's a lot of fun. And if you want to follow me more, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or you can find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnettwork, or its companion website, theburnettwork.net. Thanks a lot for listening, and it was a lot of fun making these videos. I can't wait to do another one. I'll see you soon.